again for the prayer. Lord in heaven, we bless you again now. Thank you for what you're going to do. Thank you for your leaders. And we bless your holy name now. These are here to this meeting for all our constituents. We thank you now for what you're going to do. We thank you for what you've done thus far. And help us as only you can do and you will do. And we thank you again. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll go back to this, our instruction. I think you've heard it thus far. Protocol, I think we just go back to it again. Conference line has been set up. The number is 1-917-900-1022. The access code is 32347 pound sign. And this is not a toll-free number. You may be subject to long distance charges according to your long distance plan. When the chairperson opens this meeting for public comments, please follow the instructions. Please dial 5. The moderator will unmute your line when it's your turn to speak and notify you by announcing the last 4 digits of your telephone number. Please announce your name and address. You will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes. Any person wishing to address the board regarding an agenda item will be given 3 minutes for comments. A commenter may only speak 1 time for each agenda item. Okay. Now, if I make no mistake, we go to number 3. Ms. Tanya Hobby, the interim administrator of the Florida Department of Health, will provide COVID-19 update for Taylor County.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I have presented y'all with our current press release. It kind of lays out where we are as a county. As you probably all know, that we have had an increase in cases. And so we are working diligently at the health department to work those cases. But I just want to state that the only way to fight this virus is for us to get our population vaccinated. That is the efficient tool to protect the health and prevent this disease. And there is stats out there that 99% of the hospitalizations is people that are unvaccinated. And so it is going to be my job to be out and about partnering with community agencies and with the hospital to do max vaccination here in the county. And so I just wanted to present this. We were at 19 positivity rates back in 7-2. As you see, we went down a little bit to 15. And I want to explain to you what the positivity rate is. That is when we have tested a certain amount and it is divided, and that's how they come up with the positivity rate. So if we had 15 people that tested and 3 come back positive, that would be divided into the 15%, and that's how the positivity rate is calculated. It's not done by population. I just wanted to make that clear. And I just wanted to see if y'all had any questions for me. We are at 34% population that has been vaccinated, 12 and up, here in Taylor. So I wanted to see if y'all had any questions for me. I met with the DMH yesterday. We had a really good meeting, and we are looking to do some partnerships and doing some vaccination clinics together. They've seen an increase here locally of hospitalizations here. So I just wanted to see if y'all had any questions for us as the health department.
Chairperson.
Go ahead.
If I may. Based upon what sounds like a spike in positive cases, do you have any recommendations for us, for the Board of County Commissioners, as far as our operations. For some time, we had limited capacity. We screened everyone who came into a county building. We asked people to wear masks. What are your recommendations as far as anything we need to do?
We have not received any change in recommendations at this point. Our mitigation strategies are, again, to get vaccinated, stay home when you're sick, wash your hands, kind of the same stuff that we've been doing this whole time. It will strictly be up to y'all as the commission what you want to put in place. I do know that some of the hospitals have elected not to do elective surgeries because they need the bed space. So that's just some of the things that I know that's been going on in the counties. So that will strictly be up to y'all where y'all want to move with this. I know that I saw that there's different counties doing different things.
Okay, go ahead.
So if we decided that we wanted to require masks again, and if we wanted to limit the number of people that we allow in, we can legally do that?
That would be a question for your attorney.
Thank you. So let me just say a couple of things. So far, I think you might be able to do that. You might, but you might be stopped by the governor. I will tell you this, that if you're watching the news this morning on Channel 6, Leon County is requiring all of their employees to be vaccinated by October the 1st. I think that's what they were saying. Now, is that going to fly? You know, we'll have to wait and see. That's what Leon County's doing.
You also add to that, Mr. Bishop,
Sir?
as an addition to that, verbiage to that, none of the constitutional officers were required to wait.
Correct.
They was exempted, the law enforcement was exempted, and the constitutional officer was exempted. Others could be exempted if they had medical conditions that wouldn't
Sure.
allow them to be vaccinated. Did we hear the same news? Okay.
Yeah, same thing. And also, there is a recommendation, even if you're vaccinated, to wear a mask when you're in a public place. That's a recommendation. And Lord only knows what's going to happen. But to answer your question, it hasn't been answered yet, Commissioner Fiegel. And of course, if I find out anything, I'll certainly send y'all send a correspondence to the county administrator that can be sent to y'all.
Go ahead.
So for you, Lamont, I was thinking yesterday and again this morning when I was reading all of the reports of all the positives and how the hospitals in Tallahassee now have like 47 and 46 patients, and the numbers keep climbing again. And due to the fact that we already have a limited workforce, have you thought about putting in place anything? I know before, like with the road department, you tried to separate people into vehicles, and have you thought about anything? We just can't afford to have any more losses. We can't keep up now.
I think the CDC recommendation is that for folks who are indoors, that they wear masks and resume social distancing. I think that it would be prudent to try to demonstrate every way we can that we wish to protect our workforce. And it would be, we still have the supplies needed to go back to screening our employees when they come into work. And if anyone has an elevated temperature, they will be sent home. And we can ask our employees to mask up in hallways or when they're within less than 6 feet of each other. That would be fairly easy measures to put in place. The one location that has, that has capacity, maybe, more capacity in a smaller place is the library. With the kids going back to school, I think that if we ask our employees to mask up, or to social distance, we have partitions in place. I think we can just resume the measures that we had in place before. And I see we have a couple of constitutional officers here. Do you have the safety measures in place within your office where you can social distance people, or they be behind partitions?
Yeah, social distancing, a little bit of trouble, but I mean, as far as being away from the customer who's coming in daily, yeah.
I believe we still have signage posted at the
Yes.
entrance to the buildings asking people to wear a mask, or that we.
Optional.
Is optional. And that's something that, is fairly, standard to return to. I don't know if y'all have any particular feelings about limiting capacity inside our buildings, but that's something that I think we could return to. I don't know, Conrad, I think you and I had spoken before about the latest executive order from the governor, maybe tying our hands a little bit as far as mandates.
Well, he did come out and recommend that everybody get vaccinated. So he did do that. It's just everybody's got their own feelings about it. And of course, you don't know what's going to happen nationally either. There may something come out nationally. I think the president's going to give a talk sometime today about it. We're doing so good.
So, we've been vaccinated, everybody that's been vaccinated so far. Now, does that vaccination cover the Delta, Gamma, and the, what's the other one? Delta, Gamma, and Lambda. Does that cover all of those?
Yes, ma'am.
And so, what I'm hearing, the people that have been vaccinated, that are being tested positive, that their symptoms are not as extreme as someone that's unvaccinated. Is
That
that
is
true?
correct. That is very correct. Yes. So that if they contract the virus, then their symptoms would be much milder than if not.
I'd kind of like to hear from our hospital representatives, what are y'all gonna do out there? What's your plan?
Morning, Board. As she said, we met yesterday. We've already started. We opened up our incident command system 2 days together.
Open up what?
Incident command, which is like our emergency operations center. And a lot of it's for planning and preparation and getting response for COVID. Just to put it in perspective, because some of the statistics, as she talked about, the public health statistics, I want to give you an idea of the hospital statistics. The prime hotbed right now in the state of Florida is Northeast Florida. It's Jacksonville. Jacksonville, as of yesterday, was at 192% bed capacity. So there's a health system over there right now that has over 400 patients hospitalized. Just under 100 of them are on ventilators. So as we talk about hospitalizations versus the critical care patients, it's about 25%. 150 of their hospital staff are quarantined or been exposed to COVID. Now again, not everybody in the hospital system is vaccinated. Currently, we're 43%.
Employees?
Yes, sir. But that number's already going up because we've had a lot more interest, because the healthcare people are tired of seeing their colleagues sick. And in big health systems where they're seeing their colleagues that are on ventilators, it's kind of turned people's eye to getting the vaccine. But Governor DeSantis said it's correct. When you think about this, if you still have an unvaccinated population mixing with the vaccinated population, the people that are going to get sick that are vaccinated is only 1%. of those 450 people that have been hospitalized, 1% of them are actually what they call the breakthrough. And the symptoms are usually a lot less than somebody who's actually has been unvaccinated, where it's much more telling, much more destructive on the pulmonary system. So to answer your question in regards to response, we currently have 14 patients in the hospital right now. 2 of them are COVID positive. We are doing the same thing that they're doing in Jacksonville, Miami, Orlando, and so forth. Our rate limiting step is not beds, it's people. Our workforce has already been decimated, that's a strong word, has been shortened because of nurses traveling out of our region, and then also people that have left the profession, and people that are truly exhausted. I'm not gonna lie, we're going on well over a year with this. And because of that, we will be putting in contingency plans if we have to shut down ORs for a small period of time. It's not because we can't do the OR cases, it's because we need the personnel to help cover the medical component. That's the last ditch resort. That's already occurring in other places around the state. There's gonna be no field hospitals, as of a call yesterday. Right now, hospital administrators want to keep everything inside the confines of their campus so that they can also consolidate the workforce as best as possible. But the biggest thing that is trying to be pushed is going after the workforce. It's not my communicability to you, it's preservation of the workforce, just like you stated. What do we do so we lessen the burden for our workforce? Because without nurses, without technicians, we can't care for the patient population. In discussion with both Tallahassee and other places, we're being asked to be very careful on sending anybody out of here, just because they don't have the bed capacity. And so we're trying to do, a very good job of triaging. Should you be hospitalized? Can we send you home? Or if we need to bring you in, how can we make sure you have the proper assets? So we have a COVID unit. We've got our medicine unit upstairs, and our emergency department's been working very, very well in caring for these folks. Our contingency will be lockstep with DOH and public communication, because we're seen as a huge community asset, mass vaccination, and then preparation for caring for folks should they come in. So all 3 of those things are being worked on right now. And I would share something with you too, because I know this is one thing that you definitely have to understand. Century has been phenomenal, and they have been since we brought them on. But this has been a huge challenge for them too. The other day, we asked Scott and his team to send a patient to Gainesville for us. When he got to Gainesville, he sent me a picture back of 8 ambulances waiting in line just to get into the emergency department. And every time we take a rig out of the region, that's a stress to the county and a stress to the EMS service. But they have been phenomenal in responding when we have transfers. It's not the helicopter, it's them. So I really commend you and the team for doing just that. But what you're seeing is still that demand versus capacity, even when we're moving folks, to higher levels of care. I just want you to know that, because I know that sometimes it's a burden. You may not hear the whole story on some of our patients, but we are working tirelessly to try to get them to higher level when the need is there.
Can you just enlighten all of us, or explain to all of us the timing aspect as far as transfers?
Sure. Well, there's a lot of different factors that go into play. This is a chess game in a lot of ways. When a physician determines that a patient needs to be transferred to a higher level of care, our case managers and nurses immediately call that facility to look for beds. And when they do that, we either get one then, or we get put on a waiting list. When we're notified we get a bed, we're alerted right away, and we're sort of on a clock. At that same time, we're also contacting EMS. And if they're free, depending on 911 emergency or patients of higher level acuity, because that trumps somebody of lower level of acuity, they sort of go into the queue. And there are times when we lose beds. So we'll get a call back from that receiving hospital and say, sorry, Chris, you were too late. We'll get you on the next time. When patients are being transferred from the hospital to another facility as well, it's better to keep them in the hospital as long as we can, rather than being on the road. Meaning we don't want to send somebody to Gainesville only for them to wait 3 hours in the parking lot to get a bed, or to sit in an emergency department where they may or may not get care at that point in time. So we try to do our very best to make sure that when they're ready to go, we can get them in the truck and get them out of the way. But sometimes, just because of the different variables at play, it may not be the most optimal. And we do our very best to communicate that to no way are we sitting back, and waiting for things to happen. We're very, very proactive in making sure that occurs. And I know sometimes it comes out the wrong way, but this has been something we've been working on quite heavily, because we are a rural facility, and a lot of times, it's not a bad thing we transition to a higher level of care, but when we exceed our capabilities, we have to do that into the betterment of the patient. That makes sense.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
These aren't legal questions.
Yes, sir.
This is just questions as a citizen of Taylor County. I can recall when it first started, we had a really great response to being tested out at Forest Capitol Hall. I mean, y'all ran it really well, as I recall. I was very pleased with that as a citizen. Are we doing testing now? Okay. If a person is tested, do you have a thing where you can vaccinate them right after they get tested? Say if they tested negative, say, well, it's a good idea to get the vaccine if you haven't gotten it.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And then secondly, with regard to somebody that's been vaccinated, I heard it saying that, if there's a very small percentage of people who have been vaccinated that catch it, right? Very small. Is that person a carrier though? In other words, if I'm vaccinated and I get sick, but I don't have bad symptoms, but if I don't wear a mask, can I infect you?
If you were asymptomatic and we did not know, yes, you could infect someone. But unless you get tested, we would not know that.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question. Yes, sir. I'm hearing the concern now about the 11 years old and under. Have we come up with anything yet since children going back to school in 2 weeks?
Well, if you want to present on that a little bit.
At this time, we only have the Pfizer, which is 12 and up. They have not come out with a vaccine that is approved for under 12. And we do have the Pfizer at the health department to vaccinate the 12 and up, but no, sir, we do not at this time.
Pfizer is two different.
It's two shots, yes, sir.
J&J is the only one that's the one. Moderna's the two.
I read in the paper this morning where an infant,
Yeah.
was positive in Tallahassee as well as a 6-year-old. Now, an infant like that, how do they fare?
We've had less pediatric deaths secondary to COVID than adults. A lot of reasons is they don't have the comorbidities that a lot of our adult population does. But even when looking across the board, you're not seeing the high death rate that we did with our folks that were 65 and older. The problem with the Delta variant is it's not your higher population, it's your younger population. When you're talking about a population of sub 40 that are hospitalized or even in their 40s and early 50s, that's a lot different from 70s and 80s. But again, we did a wonderful job, the last several months of vaccinating our elderly population, our skilled nursing facilities, and LTACs, and even in the community. The problem, as it was even stated by President Mayhew the other day, is the demographic that is really at risk right now are the folks that went unvaccinated in their 20s, 50s. And there's a lot of people that said, I'm healthy, I can withstand the illness. That's a pretty challenging question when you see somebody actually going through it.
Yeah, the stats, the cases are mainly within 20 to 49, and the hospitalizations is 40 to 69.
What do you think is driving the increase in the cases today? Maybe summertime travel, probably?
Well, this is a personal opinion, and it's not fact. But when you look at our state, it's wide open. And so you've got people visiting all over, and you've got a population that's vaccinated and unvaccinated. Go into Publix in DC. We're at one point where we had masks on and we took them all off. You can't tell who's vaccinated or unvaccinated. I don't know what the right way of going about it, from the governor's office, from the county office, but that's what I would make an assumption, that type of communicability. Plus, you've got a variant that is much, much more communicable than the Alpha was. I remember hearing like 225% more communicable. So you've got this spread, that's going, through communities very easily. It's just that how do we attack that? How do we mitigate it the best we can? And to what you said about masking, even, vaccinated and unvaccinated, the guidance right now is a vaccinated individual may not have to wear a mask, but people are starting to consider the maskable population. I just don't know what the true answer is.
And I think that people have let their guard down and forgot that COVID's out there, and so they're out and about, like you said, it's wide open, and people are not taking the precautions that they were taking prior to that. So, and the increase is right after 4th of July, if you look at it. So, people were celebrating and letting their guard down.
And I want to share a story, and I'm sitting here thinking, should I share the story or not? But I think I will. We had our children vaccinated yesterday, and of course, they have to go back and get their second one in a few weeks. But they didn't want to go and get vaccinated because they said when they went back to school that people would say they were liberal. And I said, you're kidding me. And so we tried to have a discussion that this is not about politics. This is about your health and what you bring home to us. And they're 12 and 14, fixing to be 13 and 14. But I was really shocked that a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old obviously have that kind of pressure at school that they did not want to get vaccinated for what their classmates would say. So I don't know. I was just shocked.
I don't have the answer. I don't have the answer myself.
One of the things that we were kind of brainstorming about yesterday was if we could find a local person that is a younger person that would be willing to put it out on social media. We can't do it at DOH because we're not allowed to use social media. That would stand firm for the vaccine, then maybe it would open up the eyes of some of the younger population. And that with the older population, if we had some well-known people here in the county that would be willing to do like a PSA saying that they had been vaccinated and they had, no side effects from it, maybe that would encourage our county to get vaccinated.
If I could make a recommendation to the board as far as our standard operating procedures, I think that the lacking formal guidance from Department of Health or from the state, I think that if we follow CDC guidelines, that it would be prudent to ask our employees to mask up indoors if they cannot social distance. And we can start screening our employees once again. We do have signage at our buildings encouraging people to wear masks.
We'll need to bump that back up because I think it's just individual offices. Gary, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, mine has mask is optional. I haven't paid attention to Gary's office or Shauna's or.
There should have been we can put it.
I think we took a bunch of that. Yeah, we took it all down. Now, still in the bathroom, it says only one person at a time.
Well, those are measures that we can implement immediately.
Quick.
And we can stagger the reporting times, like say for Public Works, we can have one group come in 30 minutes ahead of the other and leave 30 minutes, just to minimize the number of employees in communal spaces. I think until we receive further guidance from DOH or the state, those are measures that we can put in place now to protect our workforce. And, we can implement very quickly.
I don't have a problem with that.
And that's just gonna be for the employees, I guess, themselves.
Yes, and that's the way I would like to protect our workforce.
You protected them here, but you're not protecting them out in the public, so.
Correct.
Not sure if you really would be accomplishing a whole lot, but I mean, if that's what makes y'all feel comfortable with it.
At least we've done our part.
Yes.
I'm fine with that too. I've got a question for you. In history back, you probably studied other diseases that's across the country over the years. Did it spike up later on and go back down, or how many spikings was there? I mean, are you familiar with any of that history on the other?
In 1918, flu had several spikes, and that was about a 2.5 year process. And once the Spanish flu landed in the United States after World War I.
How many people did it kill?
Oh, millions.
Polio,
And polio.
there was a spike in polio because people weren't.
And measles too.
And it did spike back up over,
Well, and you keep in mind, a virus's main job is to mutate. So as the mutations occur and these different variants occur, that's where you see the communicability rise and in a number of cases, the number of people infected. So then we develop some sort of immunity to it, goes down again, it mutates again, and has the potential to spike again. So we are in our first experience of a novel virus, and having to live through this. But, to what Conrad just said, polio was a huge thing worldwide. In 1918, the Spanish flu was there. Influenza, has done its course. 68 was a horrible year with influenza. People don't remember that. H5N1 was another one back in the early 2000s. We were worried about Pacific fear as it was coming out of Malaysia and Indonesia, and the fear was it was going to come to the United States as well. And it died down. SARS, 2002. So you have all of these viruses that have had opportunity to do just that. We're just caught in one that's going through its normal cycle.
I was talking to a gentleman yesterday, he went through it about 3 or 4 weeks ago. He was in his 40s. And I said, well, you weren't vaccinated? He said, no. And I said, well, you gonna get vaccinated? He said, well, they told me I couldn't get vaccinated right after for a period of time. Is there a time period you have to wait?
Yes, and I don't know the exact time period, but what we're hearing, even the folks that did get the illness, subsequent vaccination is a very good thing. So, again, I don't know what that specific time period might be.
We're saying a month after you've had, the virus.
How long?
Month?
A month?
A month?
Yes, sir.
And if people get checked or get their blood checked, or do they show they got antibodies for it after a period of time after they've been sick? Is that positive in everybody, or some get it, some don't, or,
I'm not sure on that, but I can tell you, I had it back in January. I had my first vaccine, had it. Then I had my second a month later, and I've had my, blood done, and I have the antibodies.
You do?
So I would think that you would have the antibodies in your blood if you had blood
Right.
work done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So our instructions for county manager?
I can make those operating changes.
Okay, ask him to come in 30 minutes early or something like that,
I'll-
just to be sure we get.
I'll work with Public Works and some of the larger departments on that.
All right,
I'm fine with that.
fine with?
Yes.
Fine with, okay. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Tanya and Mr. Smith. Okay, we go to number 4. Board to further discuss road milling policy. We have a policy of the road milling. Isn't it? Now, who wants to lead this discussion? I see we had about 5, we invented this thing in 1990, early 2000, 2013, and today is 2021. We want to continue to make changes, and we can discuss it.
Mr. Chairman, I asked about this, policy and amending that so that we might be able to not, have a large quantity or mileage or things like that, but to do smaller areas, but that's the reason for this policy. material or something that might work instead of having to amend this, policy, but I'm not sure if there's been a,
Well, our county engineer and I had a short discussion about that yesterday, and the name of that is it lignosulfate?
Lignosulfate.
Right.
What's the name of it?
Lignosulfate. Lignosulfate.
I did speak to the group that kind of brought that to the table about that, material, and putting that down, I did ask, is there what's the window, how long does it last? You know, 'cause it didn't seem like it was a minute.
Short lived.
You know, so they said they're having to reapply every 4 months. I don't even know that you want to get in there.
Mr. Chair, could we have our engineer to come and speak to us about all of this? I'd like to know, Kenneth, since you're more of an expert on this, I'd like to know your opinion on all this milling stuff.
And Commissioner English said, what you referenced is very typical for dust suppression type measures. Those are, matter of fact, if you went to the lignosulfate, and I think it was them or one of the other Midwest companies, you know, they're showing it as a temporary dust control measure to kind of calm things down with the understanding that there is an obligation to reapply. You look at some of the, I received it yesterday, and I went through about 4 different producers and suppliers of that information, so I don't purport to be an expert on it by any means. But
And what we do,
what I did notice is that, you know, these products are finding their niche in the North and the Midwest, and it doesn't seem to have saturated into the Southeast. Now, is that, you know, these are a water-based type product that seems to go down, and from what I understand, it makes a type of, because of the cellulose material that's in there, it makes a type of a crust over the material that's there, and kind of locks in that dust and prevents its transposition. And I don't know if it's, you know, is it the heat that makes it brittle and breaks up and it doesn't keep that crust? Is it our frequent humidity rains that makes it more soluble so that it doesn't act as it should? I don't know yet, but these are just some of the questions that started going through my mind when we looked at this. The long and the short of it is dust suppression without a permanent solution is, and you should expect it to be, a temporary measure. You know, getting to the center of the conversation with the milling policy, I would just suggest that this milling policy was written, if you look at the history of it, it started as that, as a means to react to a dust area. And what happened is it wound up migrating away from that, you know, for various reasons, and then it went into, let's start using it as a means of a more cost-effective measure of getting away from graded and line rock roads. And I think that's where you see the policy really got formulated, and I was glad to hear you say to reference the timing of that, because this is literally 20 years worth of experience that is embodied in this policy. And this is one of the few that I've seen that at the time it was written, the authors and the board endorsed a historical account of where did we start, where did we go, and where did we end up. And the policy is where you ended up, and it was recognized in that instead of this kind of temporary knee-jerk type reaction of let's address this little situation at hand, let's do this more responsibly and put it down in a measure that we expect to maximize its longevity. And that's what the policy requires, is that it says you really should be focusing on the quality of the material that you get. You need to really focus on the application and the preparation of how you apply this. And you'll see in there, in this policy, it doesn't address the issue of, well, in those instances where it would be less expensive, we can deviate from these. Because I think it says that policy presents that this is the way you're gonna do it if you're going to try to maximize the benefit of the money that you're spending for this. So I have yet to see a reason, and I did encourage, I was hoping Hank had an opportunity to be here so that he could kind of give the installation perspective of this, but, you know, he and I routinely have conversations with respect to this, and you're seeing that when you put it down right and when you are fortunate enough to obtain a material that has a higher quality, you get the best results. If you deviate from that in any way, you should expect that not to have that longevity. So the long and the short of it is, I can't suggest and stand here and tell you it's time to deviate from this policy the way it is written in an effort to respond to what I would suggest is maybe not necessarily the best public interest of using these funds. So, and I'm basing that on our experience of application of this type of product and the clarity in which it's demonstrated in this policy. So, you know, if you have a reason that is different and not encompassed in here, make us aware of it, give us an opportunity to look at it. You know, the lignosulfate was provided to me yesterday. I leapfrogged from it and started looking for other suppliers, you know, to try to see, is there something in our region that is more applicable? You know, I want to say it was out in Fayetteville, Morgan. You know, we had a company come in and it was a chemical additive that was mixed into the substrate of the roadway for that purpose. It was a stiffening and a dust suppression. It had to be reapplied. You know, so immediately you understand that this is a gift that keeps on giving because it's always a temporary measure. So we have kind of deviated from that and tried to focus our efforts on maintaining safe infrastructure and investing our funds in something that we feel at least has, you know, some opportunity and chance for longevity.
So let me ask this question, Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Go ahead.
We talked about deviation. The county hasn't deviated from this policy in the application of millings.
I don't know. Have they in any instance?
Well, I mean, I
The only
believe.
one that I'm aware of, sir, is that this started and then it kind of culminated in the Strickland Landing. And then it has since that time been used to where it was, in my understanding, strictly adhered to. Now, did they have other instances where they went out and placed milling in a location where maybe there was already milling? I don't know. That would be a better question to pose to your public works director.
I see. And so that's what I'm trying to understand is if there's precedent and for the justification if there has been variance from this policy. That's the reason why that's about trying to adjust it so that, you know,
If I may, I can answer that question. We have deviated it from this, from what I understand, and that's my concern, because we do not have a clear policy when it comes to responding to complaints of dust and requests to try to alleviate that, and that's been my reluctance to continue placing milling in areas that deviates from this policy, which is, I believe, what started the whole discussion. Is this something we should do, and are we deviating from policy? And that's my concern.
And that is a concern. If we've got a policy, we should abide by our policy.
Yes, ma'am.
And you know, that, period, end of story.
Either that, or you must demonstrate why that policy is no longer applicable.
Yeah, and I can tell you my experiences I had, and when I was elected, I have a road that already had milling on it, and it was crumbling. Matt Cruz Road, you know, we've been out there, crumbling, and you can't grade it, you can't fix it, And so the citizens, I mean, it was great in the beginning, but when it was crumble, they called all the time. And I didn't like to drive over it either. So we ended up having just to take it all up. It was not a good choice. I don't know when it was put down or who put it down. Obviously, it might have been way back, but it was a mess.
So staff has continued to look for some type of solution, for our citizens who have complained or had issues with dust condition on their roads, and we really just have not come to a landing point as far as what's the best way to address that, or is there a way to address that that's in the best public interest?
Yeah, and it's gonna be a balancing act. You know, in the forefront of a lot of these grant applications that we've been talking about has been a BCA. So you really have to get to a point to where you're comfortable with the level of investment based on the return you're gonna get out of that. So if there's something that we feel has, you know, opportunity to provide annual application for dust suppression, but it doesn't break the bank to apply that, that's a possibility. But if it's something that is less frequent, like that you have to reapply after half-inch rain or greater, obviously where we live, that doesn't make practical sense. So, you know, you started the springboard with the dust suppression, so we will take and kind of look into see if there are at least within our regional area. I told the county administrator, I'm on the Florida Green Book Committee. That is the different locations throughout the entire state of Florida. We frequently pose questions of practice to each other to see what people are doing in other places. And I'll see that. I'll see, you know, are there other regions within the state of Florida that have kind of went through the bumps and bruises to get to a point to where they found something that's practical so that we don't wind up having to recreate the wheel. And, you know, it'll take me a little time, but I'll at least do that to see what's there. You know, is there something that someone has found that is a reasonable investment with an expected reasonable return? And I'll tell you good or bad, whichever the way that is. Because if there is a product, that's great. If there's not something that's sensible, then, you know, let's not go down that path.
Mr. Chair.
Jim.
Okay, go ahead.
And the way I see it, if you was to put milling in a spot, what I'm hearing is, if you did it right, you'd get your money's worth. If you get the right kind of milling and prepare the ground and then pack it and do it, in other words, that would be something that would last. I've seen it on Strickland Landing, I've seen it on off of my deck, and it's lasting where we did, you know, milling. So if it's done right and you spend taxpayers' money to do it right, it'll be there, it'll stay there. And if you just scatter it, and then you'll end up with washboard effect, like they had in New Hampshire on that road down there, because it wasn't done thick, and it wasn't rolled or nothing when it was put down, but see,
If you're talking about 4th Avenue, yes, it was.
it was,
Yes, sir.
but it still ended up with, what was that, the milling itself was.
And that's the only uncontrollable aspect of, well, there's actually two. The primary uncontrollable aspect of the milling policy is the material you work with. Milling is going to perform much better when it still retains the binder that's in it. The binder is the asphalt or the glue that holds everything together. So we take these roads and we chew them back up, we break them into smaller pieces, and then we apply them back down, and then we compress them so that when the heat forms up and they reach a temperature, they will kind of congeal back together again.
The tar will come out in it and glue it back together.
The bitumen, yes, sir. So, you know, over time, asphalt tends to oxidize, and you wind up with less bitumen or less glue in that material. So, you know, when we get these off the interstates that have a shorter frequency of milling and replacement, you're fortunate. You wind up getting a better product. So I think it's, you know, on everything you can control, you should control it. The things that you can't control, maybe like this embodies in here, we don't just, okay, where I would need to buy milling. I don't care where it came from. I don't care what it looks like. I just need to buy milling. Maybe we should do that. Maybe it is more responsible, even if it's let's just use numbers, $200 a load versus $100 a load, maybe that $200 a load material came off an interstate project that had dips and bumps in it, and they milled it after 5 years' time. You know, so let's consider the intrinsic value of the product that we get instead of just saying, give me what you got. And maybe that would be more control that we have in place. The second thing I would say is and this is probably one that's not very popular, is you said it's taxpayers' money. So what this formulated from was, this was a way for us to address unimproved roads in the improvement program. It was never expected that it was intended to be a spot type measure. And I say that as we always envisioned that we would begin where we left off at an improved point and then progress, because that's our best opportunity for kind of eliminating or addressing this maintenance on different aspects of the road, of the county. And in fact, what you're seeing in some of the paving priority criteria for screening for sequencing is that, is this activity going to end or limit you even having to go down there? That stop, hopscotch type stuff is not gonna do that. You know, you're still physically gonna have to go down there. So I would say it was always envisioned that the most reasonable investment of the public dollars into infrastructure was, let's start where we left off and extend out, not go down here to John Q. Public's front yard and lay down a little strip and then move somewhere else. It's gonna be so pervasive that you're not gonna be able to stop that. Because, and I don't mean this maliciously by any means, but you know, the one location that kind of was the start of all this, it is the individual that is just a little ways down on the front of that road. If I look at the addressing on that road right now, there's a dozen. I actually think there's more than a dozen. You can't sit there and tell me that the other 11 aren't gonna be ringing your phone off the hook, probably your phone, and saying, when you gonna do the rest of it? How are you gonna stop that?
I've had that same thing. I wanna know when they're gonna build the rest of it.
So why jump into that fire? I don't even understand that.
But they weren't in a situation with their health where they needed it as bad as the other ones needed, or that wasn't brought to my attention. You know, if it had been, that I knew that fella down there had COPD and couldn't even get out in his yard and get his job because of the dust, I would have wanted to run it right on down too.
Understood, sir, and then this is gonna be the unpopular part, at least for me, and this is, like Mr. Chris just said a while ago, this is my opinion, is that I don't feel that there is a public responsibility to address private issues that have no relationship to cause or effect from the public portion.
Well, if you go, and it's been done right here in this county just recently, you pave a road that never has been paved with taxpayers' money, you know, recently. And that, you know, those people were living on a dirt road and it got paved, and there wasn't but just a handful of people on it. And, I mean, it's no different than spending taxpayers' money for that than it is just fixing something in front of somebody's house that's sick.
And I disagree, because it is a community versus a single citizen. Because the Constitution in the state of Florida says we have to spend dollars for a public purpose. We cannot spend it for a private purpose.
So I'd have a better chance of getting the whole road paved?
Sorry?
I'd have a better chance of getting the whole, request for the whole road to be paved?
Go ahead. So I would say that you have a better chance of getting the correct road paved, because we have, as you probably know, prioritized all the roads in the county, and we don't do it based on individual issues. We do it based on a criteria that screens those and determines, based on all the roads, which one is the most appropriate to improve. So the best chance to get a road paved is for that road to have the best circumstances to be on the top of that priority list.
How old is that list?
How old is it?
Yes, sir, when was it updated? As far
That
as
list
when it was
is,
prioritized?
that list is live.
So that, whichever,
So the only difference in it not being to date today is I haven't input the information from the Hank Santana and Trying to think about what the next secondary, because these are secondary roads, these aren't collector roads.
So all of those would be,
Yeah, so it was just that one, I can't remember the one before that I did, or maybe someone did.
well, I mean, I don't disagree with Mr. Moody. I think the comparison would be equal as far as how those dollars are being spent in respect to, you're still trying to help the condition of the road regardless. That's what you're doing.
But what I said is that the overall criteria includes maintenance clustering and location, that doing the spot in front of a mailbox, instead of in front of an adjacent parcel, doesn't eliminate that. It doesn't move it up in that priority,
But
because
it's
you
what I
haven't
can
done
afford to do to meet the need currently.
You're meeting a private need, sir. You're
Mr.
not meeting a
Chairperson, if I
public
could,
need.
so,
Okay.
if you'll put your engineer hat back on.
I haven't.
Okay, so let me interject that the issue is that when commissioners have concerns, health concerns, is there a way for us to meet those concerns? Irrespective of, our live list, and the concern is, my concern is that we do not have a current policy to meet those needs. And I think, and that's why I asked the engineer to get involved, and we've discussed with the Public Works Director, and that really is the focus of the conversation. And I don't know that if we have exhausted all methods to try to meet that concern. What my original concern was, is that the only policy that I could find that would really address those concerns is a policy that doesn't seem to fit these circumstances. And so the question do we need to continue to find a way to edit the milling policy, or do we need to try to find another way to address the issue of dusty roads?
Okay.
Thank you. All five of us have unpaved roads, and most everybody wants their road paved. They don't want the dust. There's lots of dust. We got lots of problems. And you can't start trying to fix every problem that each one of us has in terms of the dust on a road. We don't have that kind of money, never will have that kind of money. Now, Commissioner Moody was talking about Hingston Tanner Road being paved with just a few people on it. And I will go back and say, yes, that was a community. It wasn't one person that says, oh, I have COPD or whatever. It was a whole community. And the road is only a quarter of a mile. And I waited until we could do it the proper way, in conjunction with paving, resurfacing another road. Now, I will say that I've got people in my district that have and still want me to put milling down just in front of their house. And I've said I can't do that because you've got neighbors down the road. Well, I just want you to put it in front of my house.
Measures that could be measured, so that it was more of a data-driven type decision instead of a political decision. And that allowed you guys to say, we formulated the legislative policy that this is how we will address this topic. Staff will administer this. So, and getting back to your question about, as far as doing one, is that consistent? Then let's go ahead, and if we were to put in, let's say, a 400-foot section on a particular road, and we want to see where that was flushed out in the overall paving priority, my guess is that what's going to happen is that one component that is the density, because it is a single residence at a very short segment, your density per mile is going to go through the floor and be so small that it would never make its way up to a priority of some of the others that have, 5, 10, 20 homes on that list. So we can use the data to try to prioritize these different areas. And I would just tell you that that's a great way to do it because it's objective. It uses the standardized process, but I don't think you would be wise to sit there and say, or expect that it's gonna be at the top of the list, because I don't think it will.
Well, you know, there's just a right way and a wrong way.
It is a defensible way.
And when I came to this board, you know, I was told, you look at the amount of cars on there, you look at how many residents, how many people live on the road, what kind of public transportation, how many, you know, do you have school buses? There was a
How often do we maintain it?
How long is
How
the road?
beneficial is it in the clustering aspect?
You know, so I thought that was the criteria
It is.
that we used. And, you know, you're never gonna satisfy everybody, never. And you're gonna lose some votes because you can't do what everybody wants you to do. You have to sit back and decide what is the best way to use public dollars and stick to that principle.
And that's why the policy was popular when it was originally endorsed, is that the commissioners at that time realized, here's the way to get this monkey off my back, and it's a
That's right.
defensible position of how you arrived at the decision you did. Because everything we do, and I'm sure you guys are probably the same mindset, if I make a decision, I have to expect somebody's gonna challenge it at some point. So I try to make a defensible position and have a good reason for it every time I do something.
Mr. Pierce, if I may. Are you aware of any method that we have at our disposal that we could utilize to help address some of these concerns as far as dust suppression? Or do we need to, I know that I've heard of chip seal, I've heard water trucks. We talked yesterday about this compound that could or could not be used. But, and I know you and I have spoken numerous times over the last 6 months about any methodology we could use. Is this something that we need to further research? Or are you?
I'd interject that point and say, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And I would say, give me the opportunity to reach out to the state of Florida and at least kind of gain some information of historically or currently, what are people using and doing to try to address, because it's not unique to Taylor County by any means.
No.
And let's see what they're doing. I'll try to put that into a summary type document that you guys can look at and kind of at least consider the options that are out there. And then maybe at that point in time, we can see, does it look like some of those are palatable for us, or we are not, we're not comfortable with the level of return we're getting for the investment required. We'll try to present that to you guys, and then maybe at least give us that opportunity to put something in front of us so that we kind of make a knowledgeable, informed decision, and at least, I think that's a better way of attacking it. And I will, I just started yesterday, so, and I told her, I said, I can kick this out to the green book, because I see questions, and I respond to questions all the time. So that would be my suggestion, is before we move forward into something, let's at least have a good direction in which we think we should move in.
And this is not an uncommon problem, Mr. Chairperson, if I may. I've reached out to surrounding counties and asked them, what do you use? Do you use millings for dust suppression? Do you have something that you use for dust suppression? And this is a common problem in this area. Well, I would say in the southeast, especially, well, everywhere. But I think it's more of a challenge here because of the heat and the rain, and any compounds that maybe are used in the Midwest wouldn't be, practical for us. So I think that's the best solution, if that will meet your needs. Because I think the driving force in this continued discussion really goes back to dust suppression. And that's what has precipitated all of these issues in the past several years.
Okay. Well, and I hear y'all talk about running out of material, running short on material all the time, if this door was open to use milling and this more or less to just milling in front of everyone's home, because that's what it would end up being, that lived on a dirt road, with that.
Lime Rock Road. Dust Road?
Yeah, it's like,
One is
Right.
about 8.
Yeah.
Would that cause an issue with material on the milling side as well?
potentially, it's hard, and I think that was one of the challenges that we were concerned with, is how, does this need to be cost share? How do we address this? Do you limit it to a number of people? How do you address it that it doesn't impact your budget?
Yeah, I'm not even talking about how we do it. I mean, if it was opened up to do that, then I would think the residents needs to have some cost in it. I mean, because if it was agreed to do, and not every resident's gonna agree to pay money to do it, but I mean, if you're gonna do it for free, then you're gonna get a call from every one of them.
That's the concern.
We live in the southeast, we live in Florida, we live in Taylor County. These people buy homes on dirt roads, they build homes on dirt roads. And I'm just not sure that it's the county's, job to suppress the dust. I mean, I don't mean it any kind of way. I hate it for folks that do have medical issues, but I don't know that it's the county's job to spend a bunch of money in suppressing the dust on these dirt roads.
It looked to me like if you go out there and build a $700,000 house on a dirt road, don't look like it make good sense. Then you want the county to come back and pay it. If you put it on a 5-year paving program, or ain't but one house on it. Looks like, even though you spent $700,000, maybe $250,000, that money should have been put on a paved street, rather, paved in front of it. Again, too, I'm hearing this, and I hear something about personal, people have health problems, and God knows my heart goes out for them. And then I believe at one meeting we heard so many people asked to share the cost of some milling being put in front of their house. Didn't I hear that one time?
Yeah,
I think
you did.
we talked about the residents,
Yeah.
purchasing the material and then.
Oh, shit. I know we can't do it, if you do it 100 feet in front of somebody's house, I don't know how far dust comes and goes now. But years ago, it used to be, you could see the car here and 20 minutes later, it was still dust. Is it still that way or?
At times, it depends on the conditions, of course.
So, now, these same roads, they put on a paving program. Where they at on the paving program? Do you know the road you're talking about, or street you're talking about is on?
I haven't seen the priority list, no, sir, I don't know where it's at.
And off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't need. I've had some problems with people with living on Dirt Road or Lime Rock Road. And I said, well, now, if it's not on the paving list, I don't know where it's at. But how long you been living on the road? One told me 40 years. I don't know what happened 40 years ago, but when I looked at this paving policy since 1990, they visited about 4 different times, and they have had different scenarios each time, and neither one of them worked evidently. Are we gonna get one to work today? Or are we gonna get it to work for a few folks or everybody? Which one are you working for? If I ask the commissioner today, what do you want? What do you want? And all of us want 5 different things. Can we get that? Is there enough money for all of that? Maybe we need to quit paving, just start, chip sealing and milling. Maybe we mill everything and not worry about paving everything, we've got all. At least everybody gets some satisfaction. Maybe.
Mr.
But anyway.
Chair, what you're talking about, with people built their homes on a dirt road, they knew it was a dirt road, the same thing, people are building their houses in a hole where it floods. And they want us to come and fix their problem when they made the decision to put their house where they put it. And we can't fix all the problems and all the wants and needs of all the citizens of Taylor County. We do the best we can, and we try to make the right most prudent decisions that we can, but we can't pump water out of everybody's yard more than we can put milling in front of everybody's house that has a dirt road in front of their house, because just as soon as one person says, well, I've got COPD, next one, he may say he's got COPD too. Or if he don't, he's gonna get it. I mean, you know, there's got to be a limit somewhere, and do this in a more methodical way. I like the idea of you researching to see if there's some kind of product out there. I know I've had these people that have asked me for years to put milling just in front of their houses, and well, I heard you could put oil out there on the road, and you mean, they've come up with all kinds of things, because they don't like the dust. I wouldn't like the dust in my yard either, but I like the idea of you at least trying to see if there's something out there. Then you gotta look at the cost of it, and can we cover 5 districts with it?
Well, and that's what I'll try to do. You know, first we'll reach out and see, just to get the product information that is regionally applicable for us. And then we'll go a little bit further and look for experience, and then we'll look for cost, and we'll look for longevity, and try to get it give you guys enough information that you can intelligently sit down and say, this looks like it might work. Or, you know, these bottom 3 right here, there's no way I'm gonna start putting $2,000 on a 100-foot of road every 2 months. I'm just not gonna do it. So give us the opportunity. I'll try to get that information together. I'll poll the Green Book Committee to look to see what's going on out there in the state of Florida. Hopefully we can rely on somebody else's bought experience and not, you know, invest in it ourselves.
I don't have a problem, do you have a time frame on that study? I mean, because here's my thing, I don't agree with the concept that we can't. Because there are adjustments and there are improvements that we can make. If that's paving on Hinkson Tanner, that's an improvement on a dirt road. So this concept that we can't, I'm not willing to settle for, but I would like to know, how long would that take you to get this information?
I can pose a question today. And when I have time, I will start looking out just like I did yesterday with the lignosulfate, and try to see if there's other products available that maybe the Green Book people aren't aware of. And then when I get an opportunity, I'll bring it back to you. I'm not gonna sit on it for a year, but I'm not gonna tell you I'll be at the next meeting either.
Mr. Chairperson,
I'll coordinate this through her.
Right.
And keep her apprised of what's going on.
Okay.
and to answer your question, Kenneth and I spoke a little bit about chip seal, and the concept of, I know this has come to the board before, but from what I understand, and I rely on Kenneth and Hank to get these answers, from what I understand, chip seal methodology is a short-term solution. Is that accurate?
It's short relative to paving, of course.
Okay. And
5 years, 10 years?
Yes, sir. Usually, the longest I've seen it has been like a 5-year expectancy.
County do quite a bit of it.
Wayne County does?
Yes, I've got contact information that I can get you in touch with.
On asphalt or on dirt?
Conversion.
Because it was originally intended for a maintenance effort on paved roads.
The numbers that I've seen on that are 10 to 12 years expectancy. So, I mean, of course, volume changes that, and traffic patterns and things of that nature. So
Straight roads are better, curved roads are not.
Sure.
Rattling
All
happens.
that's frequency and friction and all that impacts, but, you know, the information that I've got in respect to the chip seal road is that the prep work that was there, the base that was there had a huge impact on the longevity.
The structural integrity of the road under it has to be correct, or else because the chip seal has no, it has to sit on a very firm foundation. It doesn't have that flexing capability. It is literally just a slurry seal that has aggregate embedded in it for a wearing surface.
Yes,
That's it.
as I understand it, 2 different stone materials are set down in this particular group's roadways, and, you know, so they're as close as Swan County. And, I mean, I do have contact information.
Forward to Ms. London, I'll be happy to speak to him.
And really the question with that would be is if you take, if you chip seal a road, and compare compare that to the cost of maintenance over a 5-year period. Is it cost effective? Is it worth the investment? And of course, you know, how do we obtain those additional funds?
Well, if Swanee County is using this profoundly, then apparently they have some cost history, so they could at least give some representative numbers to us to see what it's costing them and the expectancy that they have actually seen, but, versus expected.
My understanding is they have been doing this for 4 or 5 years, so there would be some history as far as data as well as what you can see on the ground.
Well, and going off of, you know, okay, we're expecting a 10-year life out of this, so is there zero maintenance at this point, or is there's still maintenance required?
That's the expectation.
That's the questions that I would have to ask, more so than just carte blanche. You know, we expect to put it down once and not look at it again for 10 years. I don't think
And that's what I was getting at, is what type of maintenance effort does it take, and is it cost effective? I mean, does the cost of maintenance and additional rock and grading justify the?
And my guess is they're still in the data gathering stage, even at 5 years, that they are starting to probably get a handle on, this looks like it's gonna last the full expectancy, or we're seeing some degradation and don't use it in these areas, but it's good for these areas. And that's the kind of stuff I would try to flush out with whoever the individual is.
And do you know off the top of your head how many miles of unpaved roads we have?
Like 1 million, I don't know.
That's like 200 in District 3.
I was thinking,
You got 200 miles?
it's more than that, I was
thinking
thinking.
7 or something.
Yeah,
I was thinking 700 miles
I
or
was-
something along those
yeah.
lines.
Now, some of those are in, you know, they're not developed, but I mean, some of these are in residential, I mean, they're dirt streets.
Jackson County was another one I heard talking about chip seal too, so.
Yeah.
we discussed it a couple of times.
Strickland Landing was chip seal.
Huh?
Strickland Landing subdivision was chip seal.
What does it look like now?
It's milling material, because it didn't hold up. It potholed really bad. It's brittle material once it breaks.
So we gonna allow.
I'll try to find information, what's going on statewide for maintenance measures focused on dust suppression control. And then we'll also look to Swanee County and see what kind of information and history they have on their maintenance activities over there.
Okay. Is that okay with you? Okay. All right. Is that your instruction?
Yes, sir.
Look hard.
Yes, sir.
Bring it up like paper. Okay? We thank you for that presentation and that discussion. We go to number 5, the board to discuss boat ramp fee. Who wants to start that?
Well, I asked our tax collector if he could come to the meeting to try to help us walk through his most recent experiences with FWC as far as the process. I have some limited experience, but I think, Mr. Wiggins has the most recent experience.
Sure, so,
Come on up, Mr. Williams.
Conrad was correct. FWC will not let you do anything as far as charging a different fee for somebody who lives here or doesn't live here.
Or even increase the fees without their.
Yeah, increasing, without their, and they want some information from us. And we can provide that information, it'll just take some time to do that. So whatever the pleasure of the board is, we'll do whatever you want us to do.
Can you help me recall, I didn't think to look at your email, I'm sorry. But from what I recall, one of the questions that they asked was the amount of funding that we had in our sinking fund, is that accurate? Was that one of the questions?
Well, yes, I believe that was one of the questions they had. If I recall, I think there's about 230,000 in our sinking fund for boat ramps. Are we the cheapest around? Yeah, I would have to say so. So, I think FWC is gonna be concerned with what's the money gonna be used for? What our reserves are, as Luana mentioned. And how much is used by out-of-town folks versus in-town folks? Those are probably their three major questions, if I had to guess.
What's the ramps are used, or what's the fees are used?
No, how much ramps are used by other individuals. So when we sell a boat ramp decal, we have a piece of paper, whether it's, CHAG, Mays Market, Wilson's, Hatchie Bay. I'm forgetting somebody, I don't wanna do that, because I know that I'm live on Facebook, but, us and,
Now, when you say we're the cheapest around, are we comparing that to, other boat ramps that are, you know, FWC has part in those as well, or are we talking?
no, from what I understand from county road ramps, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, St. Pete, when the, boat ramp property at Keith Mitchell was bought, I know that Earl Green did extensive research on St. Pete and places like that. And, you know, at that time, which has been years ago, they were kind of in line. But I think now, I mean, you see that, I think there's a boat ramp here in Taylor County that sold a boat ramp fee for quite a bit, sold a few of them, you know, maybe 30 plus. And they're paying it, it's no different than your hunting dues. I don't advocate one way or another. It's completely up to this board, what you guys wanna do, it doesn't matter. So there's a sheet that we fill out that has name, address, everything basically. And we keep those sheets. So that information is readily available for FWC. It will be laborious to pull all that information for FWC, but we can do it. FWC wanted us to jump through a pile of hoops when we were looking at charging residents a different amount than you would out-of-county residents. And basically, at the end of that conversation or conversations, it came to the point that they were gonna say no anyway, so why waste the time trying to do it?
In other states, like Georgia, fishing and hunting license costs you more if you're out of town than it does local people.
Right.
I mean, that's just.
And that was my argument to them. I said, well, how is this possible? I mean, you see it here and things like that, and that was, well, you know, state bureaucracy, which goes back to why Marshall and Hunter think they're gonna be liberal because our state and national government is not doing what's right for the people. They're fighting amongst themselves. But anyway, that's another discussion. Yes, agree. But they just kind of, you know, they blew that off. They blew that off and said, hey, you know. But yeah, that was one of the email conversations I had and then phone conversations that I had. FWC, as I told y'all in the past, is one of the most difficult state agencies to work with. Yeah, I mean, they're tough. They're tough.
Who they work for?
They work for the government.
Okay,
They work for the government. Can we pay grants back?
We would have to pay the grant, and that was quite pricey the last time.
Yeah, I think with across the street, that one, I remember Hatchie was, 2 million plus is what we paid for that property. I remember signing that check, and that was the most expensive or largest check I've ever signed, and I didn't feel good about it. Do it in Conrad's office, and I told him that. But,
I just went like that.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, it's really, I mean, it's up to you guys. I know you have some information that you've gotten in the past, which I don't expect you to remember or have because you're having to deal with so much and bless your hearts on these roads. I dealt with it when I was here also, so it's a lot of fun.
Oh, so it's nothing new?
Oh, man, this is, well, I don't know, maybe it is new. Chip and seal, Kenneth and I talked about chip and seal quite a bit, in the past. But, you know, your collected fees, they seem to go up every year from what we're able to tell. I mean, you're getting 50,000 fees, that's just what, the $20 fee. That's not the $5 you collect, because I don't see those
How
numbers.
much did you say?
It's 50,000 basically. About 2,700, stickers that you sold, and of course, we have to pay sales tax on that, so we send that money to DOR on the board's behalf, and then cut you a check for the rest of it.
You not taxes in?
Not on that. Not on that. That's about 3,500 in sales tax to the rest. It's whatever you guys wanna do.
I wonder how that $20 for that sticker come up, where that figure come from years ago. I mean, I wasn't here at the time.
Right, yeah, I do not know. Conrad,
Flip the coin.
Gotcha, yeah. Yeah, I was not privy to that information.
Well, not to be flippant
Before me.
about it, it was very much discussed by the, 5 members of the board, and they didn't want to overcharge. And then they, is thinking about, about our people with regard, meaning the people in our county that, the recreation that they have, they didn't want to overcharge our people such that they could, use the boat ramps. That was the reason why it was, at that particular figure. And there were some people that wanted it even lower than that.
Did they see involved in that discussion?
No, they did not, except for the fact that if it's one that they had, put a grant in, then, but they, I don't know that they gave us a really terrible, problem at that particular point in time.
I would say.
I like to forget about bad stuff though,
Yeah.
I know one time, there, with regard to the FWC, Steve Spradley and I had a real hard time with him when we were talking about, putting up signs and wakes and all that kind of stuff. And I redid that, 6 times I redid that ordinance on that. And every time some lady up there would come back and have to redo it, and we just,
You give up. And that's what they want you to do, in my opinion.
yeah,
They want you to just give up. They want you to just quit trying.
we did, we kept going.
Yeah,
We kept going.
absolutely. They give you the fiery hoops to jump through and all that good stuff. Even putting a buoy back down, there was a, huge conversation, with FWC about that. It's, ordinances and this and that.
At this time, if we had that conversation, they would understand what the volumes and the different percentages are, that they would more likely entertain the concept of 2 different costs.
No, I don't.
And what's the specific justification for that?
Because I said that.
Um,
I'm sorry, I hate to be blunt, but that is exactly.
He's a parent.
Yeah, yes, exactly. I gathered some information and so I'm trying to look for a date on where I gathered this information, but we had, 18% of our ticket sales, were out of state, and the rest were in state. So.
18 were out of state?
Yeah, we're out of state, and mainly Georgia, is where you get those. One thing that we have done away with, whether it be good or not, I actually just did this on my own, was a replacement. We had a replacement fee in there of $3 if somebody was to lose it. That's you're giving somebody an opportunity to say, I lost it, come back, get it. They'll have two stickers for $20. The board loses money. So that's when the board decided, hey, we put it on the winch post of the boat. Most people own one boat, now there's some that own multiple boats, and they had their ways of making sure the stickers are somewhere on their truck or whatever they're on a different boat. But I'll go through the exercise, Mr. Newman, I don't mind at all. But I think we're gonna get back to what Conrad said, 2 years ago, maybe 3, that they're just gonna say no, and I'll have to go back into my emails and see when I started that, with them. I don't believe there
charges, but do you think if you went down this exercise, pulled this information and submitted this information, would they entertain an increase across the board?
That's a possibility. I think when one of their questions will first of all be, what are your reserves, as we know, and then, probably the next question is, why do you need the money? So if we could justify why we need the money, then I think that they would be more, approachable about it.
The maintenance, to mow and pick up the trash and take care of the porta johns and that kind of stuff's going up all the time.
Right. Absolutely.
So I mean, and we have a hard time getting all that done.
Minimum wage?
Minimum, and that, I was just fixing to say, I mean, right now, minimum wage, I mean, you're fixing to have to pay these people, $15 an hour. Maybe they see that and want to do that, and if they'd like for me to do that, I'll certainly go back and do that.
Good, full information to see if his opportunity is that they would entertain. Not that we do it, but just.
Yeah. I can start that conversation, absolutely. Maybe the lady I talked to last time is going to want to say that.
And I was just gonna kind of continue along that same lines of, justification of, do you really need to increase it, or do you not need to increase it? I thought I heard you say there was $200,000 in a capital sinking fund, which
Yeah,
apparently is excess revenues beyond expenses on a yearly basis that gets stuffed in an account. It's kind of hard to justify going forward if we have excess revenues versus our expenses at those facilities. And I know that WC is real stringent on, you can only use it at these facilities. That it doesn't bode well for us to say we need more when we've already got that level of reserves. It's going to be a hard sell.
That's been the point that the finance director made, and that's why I brought it back up, that may be the end of the conversation with FWC.
Now, if you want to purchase more boat ramps without FWC money, maybe then, because we could use more boat ramps, I think you all understand that. I mean, we could use them. And where are they? I don't know. Are they in the right of ways at Steenhatchee? There's a million of those. Yeah. So, I mean,
Hatchie definitely need more boat ramps.
Yeah, so I mean, it's.
Public boat ramp down there in the street is so flooded during the peak of the season that people in Livingston Hatchie tell me they get on their golf cart, because they can go around all the people that's blocking the roads. The roads will be blocked down there, and they get on their golf carts and ride around because you can't even drive around.
That's true.
Yeah.
You go down there when one of these storms chases everybody in, it's chaos.
It's bad.
I mean, with law enforcement presence, and I appreciate their work, it's just all that concentration of folks at one shot. And those streets, there's just not room. So, yes, sir.
And you got all the marinas right there on that same road, and they back and forth across the road with everything, and it blocks that whole area, right, the river road there, River Street there, just gets completely
It's not gonna be it.
too blocked.
And then folks trying to back trailers through all that.
Right.
So, yes, sir, it could use more attention.
And the beach, hopefully we'll get spring water, it'll take a little bit of pressure off other things, but we do need more boat ramps, because more and more people are coming. I mean, it's a fact. I mean, the ticket sales tells that there's more people coming down than ever had,
It increases every year, yes.
Tell FWC, this Board of County Commissioner, is a very forward-thinking board.
Yes, sir.
We don't just live in the present, but they try to live in the future also, not like some other entities in our state.
Yes, sir.
That would be fun.
You're right.
You're a little bit of corn flipping. Now, if you see the corn flipping, just put your head down, ease out.
So in my conversation with them, should I or should I not mention, besides the fact that we're forward thinking, that we're looking at doing additional boat ramps, and we would like to not use state of Florida money to do that through FWC? Does that help our cause to allow us to increase the boat ramp?
I don't know if we can use those revenues Are you meaning
I
to
would mean
utilize
to-
those revenues to
Yes,
go toward?
not just for maintenance, but to actually go
I
forward
don't know if we
and
can do that.
build more.
I think those revenues are restricted,
Okay.
and I don't know that we can set them aside for another capital program. Which is why we have the money that we have in
Yeah.
that fund.
Okay. Right.
Any more questions?
Right there, right on. No need to, no need to look at that.
But I do think that it's defensible to, not only the minimum wage increase, but just to remind the board, we have numerous employees that work the boat ramps on the weekends. And so it's not, it's not just the minimum wage increase, it's the fact that we pay them, overtime fund, dollars to work the boat ramps, because that's the only way we can have coverage. So by the time we get to $15 an hour for everyone, and you multiply that out although we may have more people interested at that point, we just don't know. So either it's not just the minimum wage to the $15 an hour, it's the multiplier of our full-time employees who are working, those boat ramps on the weekends.
And you got the sheriff
We got to
department,
pay.
sheriff department too.
Right.
Can I ask Sheriff Department still have it?
How many boat ramps we got?
Well, we have the two big ones.
Oh, yeah, we got somebody on all five of them?
No, just Keith Beach and Steenhatchee.
You do.
And I give you four. Keaton, Osceola, Steenhatchee, and Dark Alley.
Mandalay.
Maybe.
There's five, I think it's five that have a, box out.
That was the same information Mr. Dudley gave us on parking, at all five.
Mhm.
We're extending spaces.
And Steenhatchee's the one that's, really increased since 15. Really increased.
I went down there one afternoon about 5:30. And I got caught in the mix of it. Wow.
You're now you live it.
Yeah, that's right.
I went around the little road and, there's,
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter where you go.
I was out in my boat.
Golf carts, like Jim said, I mean, those folks on those carts can skip around all that stuff and not get collected. If you're in a vehicle,
I ran in the corner, I was like.
better have a lunch. It's gonna be a while. I mean, it's busy.
Speaking of golf carts, really quick, and I know you guys got a lot to do. So they have the low-speed vehicle that you can get registered with the state for tags and things like that. Okaloosa County, Bay County, Santa Rosa County, Pinellas County, a lot of those people are tapping into that a bit. I'll do a little bit more research on it to see what, as far as money that would come into the county through those being done.
Registered these ATVs, that's.
No ATVs, golf carts,
carts.
golf carts. Please don't mention UTVs and ATVs, please. Just don't do it, please.
They're not really- not supposed to be there.
They're not supposed to be there. They
Golf
shouldn't-
cart communities are golf carts.
Well, no, I'm not even saying for the beaches, I mean, I'm talking the ones that's, at the end of the day, there's folks that drive them up and down it. I think it's under a 45-mile-an-hour zone, that they're street legal, I mean, these people are going to we're missing out, they're going to the state of Colorado or South Dakota, and they're
Yeah.
not registered through South
Dirt
Dakota.
road legal, South Dakota.
South Dakota to get for ATVs.
To my knowledge, you have one in town whose, manufacturer certificate ordinance said it was a motorcycle. It was not a motorcycle, but it said it was a motorcycle, so therefore the state can issue a tag.
Any idea on the cost of this, those pieces?
You're looking, by the time you get done with all of it, it's probably around $100. But what I wanna ask their tax collector, because it has to be an ordinance by the board, requiring this type of stuff. And if there's a fee that goes back to the board. If there's not a fee that doesn't go back to the board, there's no reason for you guys to and that's what in the end. Because the state, once again, gets most of the money.
For this purpose, does it require insurance?
It requires insurance, yes.
To get the tag?
Yeah, get the tag, yeah. Have to have insurance more than just the triangle, there's a lot of things. And we were just over in Santa Rosa County and they were everywhere. They can't ride on 30A or on 98, but they can cross. And so they're everywhere. They're in the drive-throughs, they're in the restaurants, they're everywhere, so we'll do that. And then also I'm working on finding out about the, how Volusia County is able to build theirs with their building that they're in now. Actually, they're doing his own money, so as soon as I figure all that out, then I'll come back to the board.
We're gonna pay for it and all that, out of your budget?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, so we'll see. I don't know if that's gonna happen. I mean, we're in a different, economic level than Okaloosa County is.
Mark, we thank you for coming.
But-
I know you got a really tough job.
It's just, you know, I mean, whatever you guys wanna do, I'm good with, we'll do it, and, you know, I have people tell me it's too cheap, I have people tell me they shouldn't have to pay anything because some of their money was used to pay for it, as Conrad alluded to earlier. So, I mean, it's all out there, and once again, we can't please everybody, no matter what we do, so. So, hey, new developments, just make them pave the roads, and you don't have to worry about these dirt roads. At least we stop the dirt roads, right? Just make them pave the road.
Put in impact fees.
Impact fees, whatever it takes, so. That'll save y'all a lot of headaches.
Which we haven't.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank y'all for what you do.
So, all right, we go to number 6, I believe it is. Board to discuss recreation and steam hatching.
Yes, sir, I asked to get this added to the agenda, Mr. Chairman. This topic just came up and I've had several discussions. So what's taking place is there's, 5 teams that were active during T-ball and softball and baseball on the, ball fields in St. Hatchie. And so, for anybody that's not aware, the school board owns those fields. The county does not own or maintain those fields. So I had several discussions with different individuals. There's a group down there in Boys and Girls Club is active, and so some of the history there is there's for several years been activity, not through COVID, of course, everything was shut down, but there's been volunteer and parent activity and teams and a real great participation as far as having these options and activities for the youth there in St. Hatchie. The reason I wanted to try to discuss this with Board of County Commissioners was to be able to have an agreement as far as the commission to work with the school board in respect to continuing to provide this opportunity here for the youth and the young folks in St. Hatchie.
How many fields is that they got in there, 2?
So there's 2 fields, really one used, for baseball, softball, right up by the gym, and the one further away, if you want to say, it's to the northwest somewhat, that's where they use T-ball. It's a smaller field, they really don't have bleachers and things like that on that field. The only set of bleachers they have is up on the one, that they use for softball and baseball, but they had a 14U softball team, they had a 10U baseball team, and two different T-ball teams down there. So just understanding some of the participation levels that they have as far as the number of kids that they have, and then the number of parent volunteers, and just all the activities that are going on there. There's some real potential for, I think, seeing some good things develop. They've got, I believe, my understanding was between kindergarten and pre-K, around 40 folks that could potentially be coming into the T-ball leagues. So, plus what they already have there, seeing that program come along. So just seems like a real great potential. But in conversation, I have talked with folks in the school board, has agreed, I'm not sure if they've reached out to Mr. Bishop, but to try to work out the legalities so that there's not any hangups and being able to have like an interlocal agreement to try to help move this process along.
Mr. Bishop, you got any?
No, no, sir. I just, heard from, Ms. LaWanda yesterday that, Ms. Angela Ball was supposed to get in touch with me. I haven't heard anything from her.
And we're quite unclear about what this interlocal agreement would, the purpose of it.
Entail, yeah.
Right. That's really all I've heard is there would be discussion about an interlocal agreement, but I don't know what that would entail.
We don't know what's involved.
But if I get one, I'll certainly let y'all know.
I guess my question is, this board not knowing anything that's going on in the background, obviously, why would we involve our attorney with something that we haven't even been privy to the information? It almost seems like you're putting the horse before the cart. And you haven't explained what you want, but you did say that the school board owns some fields.
Sure.
And so I'm thinking, well, it would be a really good idea for the school board to develop those fields and put in whatever it is you want. I don't necessarily see the need for an interlocal agreement when this seems like a school board issue. I read in the paper where they've got pretty good revenues also, so I don't really understand our potential involvement in this when the school board should take this and run with it. I think it's a good idea for them to do.
Sure. The concept is, this group would like to see a long-term plan developed on that potential site so that they have the opportunity for soccer and t-ball and baseball with the youth and to give them the opportunity to play. So, they're looking at those fields and trying to see if there's a way that, this board could work with them in that respect. So it's not just to look at the season per se, but it's to look at the potential for, growth and opportunity on that site.
I guess what you're saying is basically that the school board wants to do something, but they want us to help fund it. I guess that's really what you're saying, right?
Well, I mean, that would be probably one of the aspects of that, at the same cost.
It just seems to me, I think it's a great idea for the kids down there. I just feel like that this is sounds like a school board issue. It's their property. And that's what schools do. They provide concession stands and fields and things like that. So I think it's a great school board property. I just don't see our involvement in it. I don't see how we could possibly take on anything else. We can hardly maintain what we've got now.
I think what's kind of in the talk down there is, it boils back down to the taxpayers' money. They say they pay a world of property taxes in Steinhatchee. They're in the long run, they're in the ideal that we need to be working on trying to build a sports complex in Steinhatchee. So they feel like Taylor County's got a sports complex in town. They got enough people down there now that we need to start planning for them one eventually. Isn't that kind of the feeling you get down there?
Well, so if you look at that as a long-range site, I mean, you could call it a sports complex, but it's really trying to utilize that space. But yes, I mean, if you look at the long-term potential there, I believe there's space and certainly there's growth and opportunity going on there as far as, the ways that this board could communicate and work with the school board and the Boys and Girls Club to see that through. Yes.
I think it's a good school board project. I really agree with that. And as far as taxes, I got people in my district that claim that they pay more taxes than other areas of my district. And we've all got that, where we've got areas that pay. And so some of the people in my district that pay more taxes sometimes feel like that they're entitled to more just because they pay more taxes. But, Steinhatchee's really growing, and they might be looking at some point in time to do something on their own. The way it's heading with more people moving there, I wouldn't be surprised at some point in time if they didn't form their own government. But in the meantime, I think it's a great school board project.
What's the school board say as far as their involvement? What are they willing to do?
So, I mean, you know, in respect to, there's two different aspects as far as short-term and long-term. If you're looking at, the development there, there's been discussion about, concessions or restrooms put there so that that would support field activities there. There's been, discussion about, you know, the potential walking path or something on that space, things like that. This is something that's more long-term. So, I don't know if there's grant funds that would be available for that since they own that property. I can't say that they're that far along, but in any of those respects, they will obviously need to be designed so that you get the most out of the property if you go at it in a responsible way. So they don't have a design there. If that's something that this board could help out with, I mean, certainly that would be a help, I would say.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Bishop, in terms of this board spending money on somebody else's property like that, what legally is that? Tell us about that.
Well, there is a provision in the law for intergovernmental agreements, you know? And with regard to the school board, that's a government entity. I'd have to do some research on that if I was instructed to. And like I said, only yesterday was I informed that Ms. Ball was going to contact me. So I don't know what they're talking about, and I'd have to look at it. But there is a provision that you can go into intergovernmental agreements.
This seems very impromptu.
I don't know anything about it, just, you know, other than what I've listened to this yesterday afternoon on the telephone with Ms. LaWanda.
And just to inform the board, if I could, Mr. Chairperson.
Go ahead.
There is a representative of part of the community that has asked to be placed on the agenda for Monday evening. So Monday evening is the public hearing for the FERDAP grant application, and also that group is on the agenda to speak.
Now, does this have anything to do with the FERDAP?
No, ma'am. They're two separate topics, but they're both on the agenda for our upcoming meeting.
Oh, okay, because when you mentioned that, we've already earmarked our FERDAP
Yes, ma'am.
funding. Okay.
But Stevenage is still part of the county.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so there is some obligation, that we just have to figure out the logistics. Okay?
Well, I think they have to, if I could, I think that, I'm not aware of exactly what the request is.
Yeah.
So I think, and once they make their request, then we'll have more information.
Are you privy to what's
I've
going
heard
on?
several, I mean, they've had different meetings in respect to, possibilities, and the school board discussed this at their last meeting, and their support of seeing if there's a path that can be worked forward, with the county. They're not opposed to that. So really, this discussion was an effort to put some light on the possibility that, you know, perhaps we could come to an interlocal agreement to see about helping out in the future here, understanding and knowing the use that's going on there now, how that's impacting the youth, the volunteers that are taking part in that, and the support they have there locally with business. And so there's a lot of great effort already went into this process. So today, the discussion was to try to give the commissioners some history on their involvement with that, and also start communicating the potential future needs there, and see if there's options in which we can participate.
Would there be a chance that, if there were such an interlocal agreement, that could also include their participation in helping us with our local sports complex here also then?
I'm not sure how does that work.
Well, I mean, you know, if you're gonna have an interlocal and you're gonna have potentially a sports complex down there, if this board decides that they're gonna put funding down there, then would probably need to work together on our sports complex here too. Let them help us fund the activities out there also.
Certainly, if you wanna have that discussion, I don't have a problem if you wanna ask that question, but their time here, so.
I know I've talked to Glover after he's reached out, and sometime in the future, they are gonna ask for, to potentially be able to use the complex here. So, I don't, that could be brought up in the discussion. Sure. And I'm sure it's gonna be brought up anyway at some point in this discussion. So, I've got to look and see understand what they really want, what they're looking for. There's a lot that's gonna play into it as far as, maintenance. I know we can barely keep up.
I think they have staff.
We're maxed
You have
out.
staff on site, I believe, that is currently doing what maintenance is going on.
So they are currently keeping up with the bills today from the seasons and all?
Yeah.
Well, and just to add to that, if I could, Mr. Chairperson, I know that, we have a lot of organizations that want to use the sports complex. And we are struggling now to keep up. So I'm really hoping at some point we can have what we need in place that we can, if there is request in the future for additional use of the sports complex, that we can support that. Because even off season, right now, we're really struggling. And we're getting ready to ramp up for football that starts in several weeks. And it's, I'm really just pulling from every resource I can and looking for different ways to manage all of our facilities, but especially the sports complex.
We can't invest enough in our young folks, so I'm willing to look at all our possibilities. Check other counties and see, there's some local agreements with the school board and the city, and all three of us need to be into that.
Well, now, let me remind you that the city,
Because they are, sure, they're the future. And if we that forward thinking, said that.
That was the bishop.
Yeah, that forward thinking group, sort of do what's right, okay?
well, Mr. Chairperson, if I may, we have an interlocal agreement with the city to help with recreation.
Well,
And they have put us on notice that they may not fund that currently. And that's my only concern with.
Yeah.
Yeah, any interlocal agreement can be canceled. Well, if it came down to it, if we could even look at ways to provide transportation from Steenhatchee up here. We've got Lothridge Park, we've got the sports complex, we've got other fields that could be utilized.
Well, to that point, we have looked into part of that transportation, and it didn't seem to be feasible or something that was important.
Is transportation the issue?
No, sir. As far, so some folks may say, well, why can't folks come to Steenhatchee and use our sports complex?
If you don't have one.
Well, so the reality is if I was gonna drive from Steenhatchee to Perry to practice, that's 50 minutes one way if I'm making all my traffic. Plus the time there, plus everything else that goes with that. So, this resource is in Steenhatchee. This resource is active. And this resource has a great participation. It's just this kind of discussion to take place to see if there's just a bit more that can be done from this board to help out in that capacity.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yes.
Good discussion.
I just didn't want somebody to contact Mr. Bishop and then this board wonder why our attorney's off on what might look like a tangent, because there has been some effort put into trying to organize this and see things come together for the kids' sake.
You're working hard.
Lord's working. Trying to keep up.
Yeah, good.
I was impressed this past season to see how many teams they did have. I didn't realize it until probably after the season started, and I think we ended up setting up some games to bring some of them to Perry to play the local great league. So I was impressed to know that they had that many teams and that many folks involved.
So to that point, they are able to, communicate with Dixie County directly down there, and they have played, their direct teams. So it's just a good opportunity for the teams that they have there locally. They do have a facility there where they can practice things that go into that and host games there. It's just something that has great potential with all the involvement that's going on there. So the conversation came to, is there a way that we could, corporately, I guess, see about ways to assist in different capacities to see it continue to grow.
Are they under our umbrella, under our recreation coordinator's umbrella?
No, sir.
How are they qualifying? So they're just playing during the season, they're not going to qualifying for districts or anything like
No,
that?
I don't think so.
Why wouldn't they be just a branch of our league? Because that would open their possibilities up of postseason play.
That part, I'm not sure. I don't want to speak out of turn there. I mean, I think it's just something that's worked for their group. And, that's kind of just to the point that they're at
So
currently.
is this a little small private league?
Basically, I believe so.
I think it was something that was brought up through the Boys and Girls Club director.
Yeah, she's playing a real key part in that, for sure.
Yeah.
And she's, seeking to continue to do that, to try to make available soccer. To try to have soccer, softball, baseball, t-ball, those kind of things with different seasons, because of the resources there. But obviously, with that growth and involvement, there's the potential for growing the facility itself, seeing how that does key into the community. So that's where the conversation got to, maintenance on the field, things like that, design, concessions, restrooms, having that kind of standalone, kind of facility, and even to the point of a walking path, that really would put this to a place where it's used by the public, but it would be partitioned off so that the school itself is, meeting the requirements that they have for, the state with making sure that everything's secure. I mean, so you can't have a public field open to folks on the walking trail and just come on into the gym. You've got to have it petitioned off so the resource officer, law enforcement understand that everything is closed down for school. So it's just a real nice potential. And so I wanted to try to have this kind of conversation in this workshop to see if this board was agreeable to seeking out these kind of possibilities. And if Mr. Bishop could work with Ms. Ball to see if there's any kind of agreement that would need to be made.
Mr. Chairman, have you spoken with any individuals down there? I know there's people with money in terms of helping to donate toward this project. I know when I've done big projects before and raised a lot of money through private donations, and with those people that perhaps would be in a position to help down there, that might be something you want to consider.
Sure.
As some fundraising through
Well,
this.
I will say, local business down there does contribute quite a bit to these teams as far as the different expenses they have, trying to help them with different aspects of that. So they are involved. Now, as far as, these type assets or expansions, I have not had conversations.
They might be willing to help in a capacity to this project.
Sure. I mean, I think, it's kind of one of those pieces where, there's many years in a clock. And for it to keep time, all those years have to take their part. So that was kind of the conversation here. If it's business, I do think they're supporting those teams in the school there. And I certainly appreciate those efforts. I know those teams, those parents do, because that makes a big difference on the success and the experience that those students have and those ball players have, so.
I'm good to let Mr. Bishop wait for Mrs. Ball to reach out to see what these guys are asking for.
Yeah, I mean, sure.
Understand what they're asking for, and then we can make a better decision on what.
And I think we'll get more information on Monday evening
Okay.
about what the specifics are.
Okay. Mr. Bishop, you gonna be waiting on that letter?
Yes, sir, I reckon. Believe me, I will not agree to anything. That's y'all's okay.
All right.
You're worried about that, it's, you know, it's up to y'all to make the agreement, but,
Okay, appreciate that.
yes, sir.
All right, we go to number 7, board to discuss the master project list.
As you can see, we still have a number of projects on hold, but we are making some progress, especially in, well, he just walked out, but in our road projects. Do you have any particular questions about any of these projects that I can answer? I can say on the Fourth Capitol Hall parking lot repaving project, I did reach out to our engineer about giving us some idea of what a design would entail to get a cost for that. And I need to gather some more input from individual commissioners about exactly which areas you're envisioning that would need to be paved or repaved, if you want to just repave what's existing all the way up to the Lime Rock portion at the offices, or if you want to pave both sides, because there is a grassy area that people are parking on now. So I think what I'll do is maybe sit down with each of you individually with a map and see if I can gather some input. And then I'll have more information to take to our engineer so we can get some idea of what a design would cost.
Let me ask you this. Now, grass is used, that's for percolating. What will happen if you do all the paving down there? Where will the runoff be? You have to deal with that.
I think that's something we have to consider. But, you know, something, I know that we have gone to using permeable pavers in some areas instead of asphalt, but that's something that we can definitely look at. But I think that's why we need to sit down and make sure we all understand what areas you're wishing to pave. And when I talk about the grassy area, it's just where this small fence is, on the left side of the parking lot now that people park in. So there's some Lime Rock area and there's some grassy areas, and we just need to get a better idea of what the vision is for repaving that parking lot.
Okay. Any more questions about that?
Just want the, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, is that, I know they've been working on that as far as trying to
Yes.
coordinate.
And that is something,
Which
that
one
we
was that
need to
now?
update.
Floodplain management services.
Yes,
Yeah.
so they did make a site visit to Steenhatchee and are continuing to work with staff, and they're, we're getting regular updates about the modeling and, when we can expect some designs.
Mhm.
We are, asking them to send us all the information they can as quickly as they can,
Right.
instead of holding all of it and then giving us the final product so we can move forward as quickly as possible.
Now, this is the Army Corps of Engineers, and they're looking at the
The
storm.
floodplain.
Okay, well, when are they gonna come to Ellison Road then?
I don't know yet. They've only made one site visit, but I will check on that and see when they plan.
Okay, I'd like to know, cause
Yes, ma'am.
it's very important there too.
Yes, ma'am.
But they're bringing that information so that it does help the design work for the culverts, or if they're needed or not, or that.
That's what we're trying to
That was a
accomplish.
coordinated effort, I thought.
Yes, that's what we're trying to accomplish.
I guess I thought, I was under the understanding that that they would be here toward the end of the year, but they've already been working here.
They made one site visit, and that was 2 or 3 weeks ago. They did make it to Steenhatchee, and I will check and see when they will schedule the other site visits.
They need to come while the water's up and look at it. They don't need to wait till it dries up to look at it.
Yeah, too,
Sure.
with the road out there not being finished yet, to me, it would be very critical for them to look at that ASAP to see if indeed we're going in the right direction, or, and you know, some of the issues you and I have already talked about, so I would really like for them to come as soon as they could, and at least, you know,
I'm sure that's been communicated, but I'll make sure. Thank you.
Next is number 8. I see adjourn.
That's it.
Second.
Line muted.